All right, you guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast. I'm here by myself today. My co-host Ben will be back next week, but I want to talk to you guys about something today that I think is really important, and I like to think about this every year or so, and just kind of do a little audit on my own life, and maybe this will help you guys too. So, the question I have for you is: have you ever noticed that the biggest changes in your life usually weren't caused by a book or maybe a podcast or even a new goal? They were caused by a person. A conversation, a relationship, maybe. Just think about it. Who introduced you to your career? Who believed in you before you even believed in yourself? Who challenged you when you were settling? Who opened a door that maybe changed your future? Success is not a solo journey, it's relational. And we often hear this quote. I know Ben and I have actually shared it on a few of our other past episodes from Jim Rohn, which is you become the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And while I definitely do think there's a lot of truth to that, I actually think there might be a different way to look at it, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So it's not just about who you're around, it's actually about intentionally surrounding yourself with people who serve different roles within your life. Because not one person can be everything for you. No mentor can also be your peer, or no coach should also be your best friend. No friend should also carry that weight of challenging every other area of your life. So as I look back on my own journey in real estate, business, personal growth, I've realized that there's kind of these 5 types of people that have consistently helped me become a better version of myself. So I'm going to share what these 5 people are today. And by the end, I hopefully have you guys maybe identifying some of these in your lives. And if not, maybe more importantly, maybe who's missing within that 5-person massive team of all-stars. So let's just jump into it with a brand new episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast. Okay, so the first of the 5 is going to be the mentor. So everybody needs somebody who's already been where they want to go. A mentor shortens the learning curve. They help you avoid mistakes that you didn't even know existed sometimes. They've already paid tuition through their own personal experience. So why pay it again? When I got into real estate, I identified people that were selling hundreds, if not thousands of homes. And instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, I watched them, I listened to them, I asked questions. And one piece of advice from that right mentor can definitely save you, maybe even years of your own trials and tribulations. So mentors definitely also don't have to necessarily even know you by your first name. There's mentors out there nowadays that can be digital, through podcasts, YouTube. There's so many other outlets out there these days. And you can still have a relationship with that person, even if you're not meeting them face to face, or even if they're not speaking to you directly, you can still build that relationship with them and still have a lot of value that you could get from them. So again, books, podcasts, biographies, there's a lot of different ways, in-person seminars. The point isn't proximity, it's really just perspective. So just, I think asking yourself this question is really also important. Where do you maybe see yourself in 5 years, or who's 5 years ahead of you right now? Maybe who's 10 years or 15 years ahead of you? That's the kind of life that maybe you want. And if so, learn from those people relentlessly. So that's the mentor. Now I want to talk about the coach. Now, some people kind of bucket these two together, but I think there's definitely a very specific difference between the two. So with a mentor, again, it's somebody that really, really focus more on just learning from their mistakes and just trying to identify people that are along that same path that you want to be on. With a coach, they're a little bit different. They're really demanding action. So a mentor might be giving you wisdom from their own experiences. A coach is really just demanding action and the most out of you that they can get. So there's a big difference there. A mentor might tell you what works. A coach makes sure that you actually do it. They ask uncomfortable questions. They hold you accountable. They don't let you hide behind your excuses. Every high performer has coaches. And that's something that I've really been aware of over the last couple of years, is just seeing how even people that you think are at the very, very top, they're probably the ones that have the most help, the ones that have the most coaches, the most mentors. It's just crazy to think that it's almost like a reverse of there. Normally you would think that people on the bottom of the journey that are just kind of getting started would have all of the mentors and coaches, but actually, there's levels to this, maybe is a better way to put it. Professional athletes, CEOs, Olympians, they all have these. And that's because we all have blind spots. The higher you climb, the harder sometimes these blind spots are to see. And the fastest path forward Sometimes it's not another YouTube video. It's somebody saying, Adam, I know what you're capable of and you're playing too small. Or, they're talking to you and just really believing in you more than maybe you believe in yourself at times. Coaching isn't an expense if you're really valuing it and doing it the correct way, because it's an investment towards accelerated growth. What maybe you could do on your own in a year with the proper correct coach, maybe you can get it done in 6 months. And what's that extra 6 months of time worth? How much money can you make after implementing what you've learned from your mentor and by when your coach is holding you accountable? So coaches, mentors. Now we're on to number 3. The third one is going to be the peer. Now, peer is something that's a little bit different of a perspective here. So a peer is just the one that oftentimes can get overlooked, I think. And that's because, you need people that are walking alongside you, not ahead of you, not behind you, beside you. There are friends out there who understand what you're building because maybe they're building something too. You can celebrate each other's wins. You can challenge each other, encourage each other, sharpen each other. Iron sharp. I guess another way to put this is iron sharpens iron. Some of my very best conversations always happen with other business owners. It's people that I can really relate to. Other realtors, maybe just other friends that are also really trying to pursue progress. Hopefully, a lot of you guys that are watching or listening are also in that category. Because again, not everybody has all the answers, but because we're asking the same questions with our peers, that's going to be tough because growth is hard. Don't do it alone, you guys. Find peers that are on the same page as you, have like-minded goals, just are on that same wavelength that you're on. And I guarantee that might be one that you're missing right now. It's something that I've really been aware of over the years, and something that I've been a lot more intentional about recently with just surrounding myself with peers that, again, share the same bigger goals and people that you can really just open up to and share your massive dreams with. And instead of them, thinking you're crazy, they lean in and say, oh, that's cool, man. What else could you do? That kind of stuff. All right. So that's number 3, peer. Now we're going to talk about number 4. And this one's cool. This one is somebody that you teach. So somebody that you teach. And this is surprising for a lot of people, but that's because teaching actually can make you a lot better. When you explain something, you understand it so much more deeper. When you help somebody, you reinforce your own habits. And whether it's your kids, a new employee, maybe it's a younger realtor in my situation that I'm trying to maybe help out. Somebody's just kind of getting started. Give away what you've learned, because, the funny thing about success is it actually grows when you share it. Everybody holds on to these things like it's, secret sauce. It's the key that's going to unlock every door. And just, everybody has this, unfortunately, has this idea that, if you have something like this, it's valuable and you don't want to share it with anybody else. But man, once you actually start sharing and actually start being more giving with not only your time, but your experience and your expertise, it's crazy. Some of the most fulfillment that I've ever experienced, it hasn't come from selling or buying another home. It's come from just watching somebody else succeed because I was willing to invest in them. Your knowledge isn't complete until you've passed it on. I think that's really, really important, especially for anybody that's listening that's getting a little bit older, whether it be actually older in age or just maybe further down the path on whatever career they're in or whatever they're working towards. The further you are along the path, I think that's when you really start to prioritize and get more fulfillment out of helping people that are, maybe a little bit further back from you, but have that same goal, have that same vision, and just have that same intensity and, what's the right word that I'm looking for? I guess the passion behind, making it a reality. So really, really good, guys. I think that's one that is often overlooked, is just teaching and sharing the knowledge that you over time develop. And then last but not least, number 5, this is going to be a little bit different too, but this is somebody that's challenging you. Probably the most important of all 5 of these people, to be honest. And that's because not somebody that you're not looking for somebody that's going to be criticizing you. You're looking for somebody who loves you enough to tell you the truth. And man, if you just start thinking about that, let's just say you have a new business you want to start and you start sharing the idea with different people. Who do you want, or what kind of response do you truly want from these different people? Do you want them to just be kind of stroking your ego and, yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah. Or do you want people that are like, yeah, that's cool, but man, have you thought about it from this angle or this perspective? Somebody who really tells you the truth is incredibly valuable. Somebody who calls out your blind spots. somebody who isn't impressed by your excuses, somebody who asks, is that really your best? Or maybe is there something else you could do to make it even better? Too many people surround themselves with comfort. I've been guilty of this at many times throughout my life. And I think what's more important than comfort is honesty. Growth doesn't happen inside these echo chambers. It happens when somebody respectfully says to you, you know what? I think you're capable of a little bit more. And for some people, maybe that's a spouse, maybe it's a business partner, maybe it's that coach, maybe it's a trusted friend, whoever it is, don't push those people away. Really protect and value those relationships because those are very rare and hard to come by. Okay, so now I'm going to bring it all together. So think about these 5 roles: the mentor, the coach, the peer, the student, and the challenger. Now ask yourself, who fills each role in your life today? Maybe you've got a great mentor, but no peers. Maybe you've got some great friends, but nobody's really pushing you and challenging you. Maybe you're consuming content every day, but you've just never really started teaching somebody else what you've been learning. This growth that you get from doing all this kind of stuff, it's not accidental, and neither are relationships. The people around you are shaping your future, whether you realize it or not. So choose them very intentionally, invest in them, be grateful for them, and become that person for somebody else. Now, one of my favorite quotes says, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And I'll take it one step further. Show me your relationships and I'll show you your ceiling, because none of us become who we're meant to become alone. Every successful person you admire had people who believed in them. They challenged them, they coached them, they taught them, and then they were taught by them. So here's your challenge this week, you guys. Write down whoever those 5 roles are, put a name next to each of them. And if there's a blank spot, don't wait for that person to magically appear. Go find them. Reach out, ask questions, invest in those relationships, because your next breakthrough, it might not come from reading another book or listening to another one of our podcasts. It might actually come just from one simple conversation. And that is what's really going to move the needle and get you to where you want to go. Thanks, guys, so much for listening to this quick episode, this solo episode on the Pursuit of Progress podcast. Excited to have Ben with me back next week. And if you guys have any questions, if you have any suggestions for future episodes, if you just want to connect, feel free to reach out to either of us. And if you are interested in real estate, regardless of even if it's in Colorado, anywhere else in the country for that matter, I'd love to see you guys on our next live free webinar. We do these at least once, try and do them twice a month. Just go to denverwebinar.com. We've got one coming up here in about a week and a half, and I'm excited to get that one kicked off and hopefully see a few of you guys on there. So have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week. We'll see you guys next Friday on a brand new episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast. I'll see you then. Bye.